Welcome to this week's edition of The Collective, where we try to bring to you art, music, entertainment, politics, and anything else that's rolling around in my head that I think is significant, especially because there's so many other things going on in the world today. We need to have good news, we need to have positive news, and we need to get clear and concise information. So, today, this evening, I've brought into the studio a very dear friend. She is Erica Bradley of Crimson Travel, a very, very stealth entrepreneur. And I brought her in because we're going to talk a little bit about money. And she's going to be here once a month, whether she realizes that or not.
I know now.
She knows now. So, Erica, welcome to The Collective.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
This is so great. So we're going to talk money. And the reason why I'm bringing Erica in is because Erica is, of course, above average. But as far as thinking about money and how we spend it and what we do with it, Erica is sort of like the average person. She doesn't necessarily have a financier background, but she's giving good advice. And the name of your Facebook page is what?
How do you eat an elephant?
How did you arrive at that and relate it to money?
Well, the subject of money can be really daunting. It's huge. There's a lot of terms out there. There's just a lot. And so sometimes I find in conversations about money, people tend to shy away from it because it's almost too much. But how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So you take little bits of it and you make it manageable. Make it manageable.
But do you think it's because people are intimidated to talk about money? That we just don't get enough so-called money skills starting out at home, and therefore outside of spending and making it, we really don't think too much else about it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Intimidating is a great word. I mean, it can be liberating if you've got a lot of it. It can be debilitating if you don't have enough of it, and most of us get the message about, pay your bills on time, save your money, but the nuts and bolts of how, and even when we were younger, how looks very different today.
Yeah.
So, that's why I wanted to start that conversation.
Well, did you find that people were still uncomfortable about discussing money?
Yeah, there's a lot of uncomfortable feelings around. There can be a lot of shame. Find yourself in spaces, and you and I know this, Michelle. I mean, we are in spaces sometimes with very powerful people.
Yes.
And then we're in spaces with, your average individual. So finding yourself in both places, you can be really intimidated. You might look to your left or right and think the person next to you, they've got it going on more than you do. And chances are good, they've got their struggles too. If they today, they have in the past, or if they haven't yet, let them keep living because it could come.
Eventually it's coming, right?
It's coming, right? So I wanted to get, the shame out of the way. I really wanted to open up the conversation for people to be able to talk about it and be free to talk about and help one another. Because if I've got and you don't have, I really don't have. So it's got to be a holistic thing for us, for our community, for women. We're the CFO. We're the CFO of our homes. Whether it's a home of one or it's a home of 10, chances are good. We're running things in our home, and we want to be, mindful and help everyone win. If one wins,
and truth be told, most women, not gonna say you, but most women outlive their spouse. So when that happens, then there's a whole lot of financial, I don't want to use the word burden, but responsibility might be better. A lot of financial responsibility that they take on. And they find that they don't know as much about money as they thought they did. And so consequently,
broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Retirees, or you lose your job because of COVID. There's a lot of different reasons why people probably really need to look at that money conversation and start to have it not only with themselves, but their children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. If we find ourselves by ourselves because of a devastating situation, you don't want to be heartbroken and then try to have to figure things out too. We're left with children, we're left with homes, we're left to having to educate our children, sometimes having to educate ourselves to start over again. And, you don't have to have a lot to get it in place,
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, as you mentioned, I'm a luxury travel agent, and it breaks my heart when women who work very, very hard want to take a trip, but they can't. So they tend to sell themselves short. Well, you don't have to go today. You can, plan for it while you're taking care of the nuts and bolts of your home, but still treat yourself, but have those foundational things taken care of first. So that way you don't have to shortchange yourself. That way, no emergency will catch you off guard. And it doesn't matter how much you have. Start where you are. You don't have to make a lot of money. You don't have to have a lot of money. Start where you are. How do you eat that elephant? One bite at a time. And your plate doesn't have to look like anybody else's plate.
Right.
You just take your bite. Take your bite. That's it.
And make it work for you, right?
And make it work for you. Exactly. Well,
the first post that you did caught my eye because you did talk about, what do you know about money? What's the average person know about money? And when I say you were talking to that particular audience.
That's right.
But I think you hit the nail on the head because you started to talk about, well, what language do you hear that you not understand? And it turns you off from really thinking about what you need to save, how you budget, what is it that you need to do with that money. I was very interested in that because it triggered something in me like, hey, I really need to think about this. And the fact that there was a point where I was starting to have that conversation with my daughter and I stopped. So now I need to do it again because she is a young person who's about to embark on her life.
That's right.
So it's important, not only as moms, but as women and just as people in general, that we start to think in terms of how we use our money. Yeah. And one of the tools that you suggested is one that you like. And it's called
YNAB.
Yes.
YNAB.
Yeah. And you budget.
Yeah.
So why do you like that better?
Well, it's modular. It's easy, first of all. With everything else going on, I don't need 52 million spreadsheets and such. I'm just not that person, right? So it's easy. It's very intuitive. It's modular, so you can add your own categories.
Okay.
And I love it because I typically do it on my computer, on my desktop computer, but I also have the app on my phone. My husband has the app on his phone, and we have certain categories of things that we can spend in. So if he's out and about and he wants to buy something, you don't need to call and, do we have the money for this? I don't need to call and say, do we have the money for this? You open up the app and it's right there. You have the category. And I mean, we have all kinds of categories. And I used to think of a budget as you can't buy.
Yes.
But it's not. Yes. I got money over here. I can buy because I put aside money for things, yes. And I plan for things in the future, those things that are going to break down, those gifts, all those things that can catch you off guard. You can put it in, you need a budget, carry it with you. It's like a set it and forget it kind of a thing. And I absolutely love it. I need tools. And it doesn't necessarily need to be YNAB. It could be, there's all kinds of tools.
Right.
Maybe you are that spreadsheet person. That's awesome. Whatever works for you. My thing is I'm just a proponent of a tool. Use something, use something. Yeah. And that one works for me. Super, super easy.
So I noticed too that you talked a little bit about visualization.
Yes.
And I thought that was a very interesting approach.
Yes.
So talk why you think that can apply when we start to think about money, because you just brought up a very good point. We always think about budgets as being what I can't do, as opposed to what I can do.
That's right.
So I guess that and visualization can walk hand in hand, right?
Absolutely. Budgets are liberating, and visions or vision boards are enlightening. They're motivating, you know. So we've all heard the statistics. I think it's 42% of people, or 42% of goals are achieved when they're written down. 42% more goals are achieved when they're written down. So take it a step further. I love vision boards. You know, we have a soror who does vision board workshops, and she's phenomenal with them. And I attend them all the time. And as your goals change, you change your vision board, and it's right there. It's a beautiful visualization. It's proof that you can have propped up someplace to remind yourself of what's important to you and where you're going. Yeah. So if I have that dream trip on there that I want, or if you have credit card debt and you cut your credit card up and tape it to that vision board, right? The next time you want to buy a pair of shoes, you're going to think that interest rate is not worth it for me.
Yeah.
Because I want to take that money and I'd rather do this with it. Visualization is such a powerful tool. And it's one of those things people think it's like, woo, woo, woo. You know, it's like,
right.
It's not. It's powerful and it works. It works.
Last but not least.
Yes.
There was the suggestion, which I like, about putting away the $5 every time you get it.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So I put out there one day about change, because at the end of the day, I saved my change. So again, that same soror, can I mention names? Because I think she's dope. So I got to mention Tressa. She said she collects $5 bills in an envelope when she has a goal that she wants to buy. And I was like, wow. But, you know, when you think about it, you say, $5, I need $5. What do you need $5? Or are you going to go to Starbucks? I just think that was awesome. And then she said, you'd be surprised how quickly that adds up. So we've been doing it. You know, there's a small little clique of us that started it, and it works. Whatever works for you. Maybe maybe it's change. Maybe it's $1. Maybe you're balling and you could do 10 or 20. What? The thing is, do your thing. The thing is, find something that works for you and put it in motion and see how far you go. But I really want to encourage people, particularly women, dispel the myth. Everybody is not doing as well as you think they are. And for those who are, that's awesome. We can learn from them. It's one community, regardless of where you are. It's one community of women loving on one another and helping one another. So we all win. Cash is queen.
Oh, I like that. Cash is queen.
Cash is queen.
So if people are interested in your Facebook page, how do they get there?
Oh, they just, it's called How Do You Eat an Elephant? There's a big colorful elephant on there. Hint, hint. Yes. Big, beautiful, colorful elephant. And they just click on like the page and I'll see your request and I'll let you in the room. We're trying to, grow our audience. And it's not just me putting information out there. I ask for feedback. I ask for suggestions. I ask for, just join this community so that we do better together.
And that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, that's
for us to do it together. Be a collective.
Yes.
Be a collective.
Be a collective. Absolutely. Yes.
Erica G. Bradley, thank you so much for coming on and being my guest this evening.
Oh my God.
And we'll see you in another month.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate this space. Thank you. This was great.
Yeah, this was fun. Erica G. Bradley of Crimson Travel, who has a Facebook page called How to Eat an Elephant.
How do you eat an elephant?
How do you eat an elephant?
Yes.
One bite at a time, and it is wise financial advice. And it's free.
It's free.
So take advantage of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. See you next month.
Absolutely. Bye now.
Bye-bye. And we're back. This time, because this is the collective, and I like to think in terms of different things we can discuss. This is the day after Election Day. This is when we're taping. And there's no way that anyone in the United States is not glued to a radio, a mobile device, a tablet, or a television to figure out or get the news as to who is going to be the next president of the United States. Here with me in the studio is the one, the only, Professor Scott Mclean of Quinnipiac University in the Department of Political Science, and I welcome him to the collective. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. I appreciate you. I am so honored to be part of the collective now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, Scott and David, let me see.
David Schultz.
David Schultz wrote a book called Presidential Swing States, and it's published by Lexington Books. And David Schwartz is of Hamline University. And so,
David Schultz.
Yes, David Schultz. So I want to ask the question first. What defines a swing state and why is it so important?
It's hard to know which one to answer first there, Michelle. I'm going to start with why they're important.
Okay.
It used to be a time in American political history, roughly from 1888 to 1988, where when we had a close presidential election, it was close all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
So you would typically see in a close presidential election, about 40% of the states would be decided by 5% vote margin or less. But something funny happened in 1988, and we began to notice, and the media took note of this, that in 1988 and afterwards, we began to see that close elections in the presidential national race would not lead to a lot of close races in the states in the country. Actually, oddly enough, we got fewer and fewer close states, and they became known as swing states. And the reason they got to be known as swing states was because it seemed like the same several states frequently were in this batch of very close states.
Mm-hmm.
And you know the states I'm talking about: Florida,
right?
Ohio,
North Carolina.
North Carolina has been recently much closer, and so Missouri is a famous swing state. It's no longer a swing state; it's a very Republican state. But once upon a time, it was the state that would swing back and forth depending on who seemed to have the advantage in the national race. Ohio has been this way for a very long time. And so this is an interesting phenomenon, right? Because, and it's an important phenomenon because you and I, speaking here in Connecticut, I'm in Connecticut, we cast our vote for the president, but we don't see a lot of campaigns come through here. We don't see all the television ads. We don't, our vote doesn't seem to be as important as the people who we're talking about right now, which is Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Florida, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so on.
Yeah.
And the list. it became to be instead of about 20 states that were competitive in the election of 1960, which was a really close presidential election.
Yeah.
You had 20 states that were as close as the ones we're all focused on right now. The really? Arizona, the 5% really close states. There were 20 of them. And now it's only 5 or 6, maybe 10 or 11. In 2016, there were 11 of those states. In 2012, there were 6 of those states, I believe it was. So it's the sense that we don't matter very much.
But why is that, Scott? Are swing states sort of a media creation, or is it really a thing?
Well, it's a little of both, Michelle. They are a thing. We really do have those close states, but it is also a media creation. So with the advent of 24-hour cable news and these networks that have a lot of resources, and they need to produce interesting, entertaining, and spellbinding coverage, where they're sending reporters to these states and constantly asking the tiny sliver of undecided voters in these states who they're going to vote for, when 80% of the country or more has already made up their mind who they want for the White House. So it's a small number of voters who get a lot of attention, and I mathematically, your vote is really just as valuable as mine if we don't live in a swing state. It's true, but I think psychologically we get the sense that we're just spectators. We're just watching this on the sidelines, and we might vote for our Senate or House candidate or our local candidates, and that does matter. But when it comes to the all important presidential election that everyone is focused on, bunch of states that are very, very blowout states for either a blue state or a red state are kind of on the sidelines and just watching in awe and wondering why such a small percentage of our population really has the power to decide these things.
But now, is that tied into electoral college?
Yeah, it is. It's of course it is related to the electoral college. The framers of the Constitution designed the electoral college kind of as an afterthought. It was they'd figured out how Congress was supposed to work. They made all the compromises, and the worst compromises had to do with slavery, and defending, trying to balance out the slave states with the northern states,
the free states.
But once all those things had been worked out, then they came to the question of, well, how are we supposed to elect the president? And you didn't want Congress to do it, because then the president wouldn't be really free of Congress. The Congress would be his constituency. He would kowtow to them. You didn't want to have a national election, God forbid, back in the 18th century, that we'd actually have, the masses elect people. Plus, different states, because of slavery and inequality of wealth, didn't allow different kinds of people to vote. They'd already made that decision. So they came up with the Electoral College. And it's the one institution in our Constitution that has never worked the way it was designed to work by the framers.
Can you explain it a little bit, Scott? Can you explain what the Electoral College is? Just a little bit. Without going
the Electoral College is an institution in the Constitution that provides for a number of not senators, not members of the House, but electors who are, each state has the same number of electors that it has for its representative and its 2 senators. So every state has at least 3 electors, no matter how small the state is, no matter how sparse the population is. And this was, designed as a way to protect the small states who they would have more weight in their vote, which is why it's, it can be an illusion when you see those big electoral maps on election night with these really broad swaths of red. These are states with not very many electors, but because they have huge territory, it looks like they've taken up a huge amount of the country. It's a very misleading map about what the real picture of the election is. But don't let me get off track. The Electoral College is basically an institution that selects our president. So on election day, you're actually appointing the electors that will come from your state, that will then meet in your state capital in January. I believe it's January 8th. They meet in the state capital, and whoever got the majority, whoever got the most votes in your state will get all of the Electoral College. There's only 2 states where this doesn't actually work this way. One is Nebraska, which doles out the electors according to who won in a congressional district. And by the way, the Nebraska will be a very important vote. It may be that one district in Nebraska may be the one that puts Joe Biden over the top for the 270 Electoral College votes that he needs in order to have a majority in the Electoral College. The other state that does this dividing up of the electors is Maine. This year it didn't come into play because Biden won the entire state of Maine and not just one district of it. So that's good for Biden. Good for him.
So electors are chosen by party, correct?
Correct. When I said before that the Electoral College never operated the way the framers actually intended it to, very soon after the Constitution was ratified, various factions in Congress began to build these very, very almost primitive political parties. They were more like factions in Congress. But pretty soon, some smart political people, namely Thomas Jefferson, figured out that if he could organize these factions into parties in the states, that they could begin to control who goes to the Electoral College, and therefore who wins. And so states gradually in the 19th century, early 19th century, began to create slates of electors that were partisan, and that states would decide either get the whole slate of one party or the whole slate of the other party. It doesn't look proportional at all. So it's winner take all. And this is another unintended consequence, because what it turns the electors or the Electoral College into is a very distorted picture of the country. So you can get a situation like we did 4 years ago, where Hillary Clinton got the most votes, but lost the Electoral College because those smaller states got counted more in it, and that they put all of their voters, all of their electoral votes into 100% of their Electoral College, even if the state was close. So we have a close state 4 years ago, like Pennsylvania. It was decided by a percentage and a half, right? But 100% of all of the electors from Pennsylvania went to Trump last time. And the same thing will happen this year, maybe with Biden, if he wins it, or if Trump wins it again. It'll be a very, very close race and a long, protracted count. But whoever wins the most votes in that state, no matter how close, will get 100% of the Pennsylvania vote.
All right. So hold that thought. We're going to break here, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about what we've seen today. All right.
Okay.
Professor Scott Mclean of Quinnipiac University is here to break it down for us in regard to Electoral College and swing states. We'll be right back. We're back, and we're talking about swing states and electoral college in lieu of all what's going on right now in the United States. In case you haven't heard, we had a little thing called a presidential election this week. And so now the smoke is beginning to clear a little teeny bit as we try to figure out in the so-called swing states who is going to end up with the margin that will take them to the magic number of 270 for the Electoral College. So we're back with Professor Scott Mclean of Quinnipiac University's Department of Political Science. And I welcome him again to the collective. It's so good to have him here as a guest.
I'm loving every minute of this, Michelle. It's so fun to be with you.
Thank you. He is the co-author of a book entitled Presidential Swing States. And he is the co-author with David Schultz of Hamline University. And the book is published by Lexington Books. So tonight, we've seen that those narrowest of margins have started to favor Joe Biden. But
yes,
my question is, so swing states have changed, right? Particularly in this election, because Arizona would have never been considered a swing state and hasn't voted blue in, they said, since I believe Clinton, 1996.
1996, yeah, 1996, and the time, and the only time before that was 1948 with Harry Truman.
Wow.
So, this is why political scientists are interested in this swing state stuff. I mean, the media is interested in it because it's just interesting and the election hangs on it. But political scientists like me look at other things like
what?
And so do you, Michelle, because you're sort of saying, wait a minute, why do some of these states that weren't swing states, that used to be always Democratic or always Republican, why do they start swinging? And why do states that were swinging for a long time in the old days, like Missouri, and I think even in today's times, Ohio, they used to swing all the time and go back and forth, but now they seem pretty stably for one party or the other. Why does that happen? And is there a pattern to it? Or is it just some random thing that kind of happens? Now I'm a political scientist, so I have to think that there's a pattern to it, or at least look into whether there's a pattern.
Yeah, you kind of want to look for that, right?
And to be a good scientific analyst, you really have to have a definition, right? So we're kind of back to your first question, Michelle. What is a swing state? What exactly is that? And we've said what they are. They're close states that tend to go back and forth between the two parties very frequently, and seem to do this over a sequence of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or even longer series of presidential elections. And what are they? Yeah, and so I can tell you that.
Yeah, let me ask you though. We know that with the state of Arizona, it was sort of a particular choice in them swinging because Cindy Mclean, the wife of the late senator, asked people not to vote for Donald Trump. And so I'm thinking this is someone who has been in the political eye, i.e. John McCain.
John McCain, yeah.
John McCain had been in the political eye, had been someone who represented Arizona for at least 20 years, and was very admired in that state. So
and very insulted by President Trump from many times, and was really his political nemesis. Yeah.
And so to expect, I think Trump did not think that his opinion and the way that he expressed it would have had any effect on Arizona because they had been a dyed-in-the-wool Republican state. But on the other hand, that was primarily because of John McCain. So
Yeah.
I wonder how much influence that had, as opposed to it just being, a state that said, okay, we've had enough. We're gonna vote for Biden.
That's the funny
vote for a Democrat.
If that's the funny thing about it, Michelle, is if it were these sort of immediate short-term causes like John McCain or Cindy McCain, working against Trump, or momentary things like the pandemic, that just comes out of nowhere, that certainly had an effect on something going on in Arizona. But what we're trying to do when we analyze this stuff is really dig down a lot deeper. What's really changing long term in making this state more and more and more competitive? So one thing we can really see, and looking over a longer span of time, we can see that the margin of victory of Republicans win it over and over and over again, but every 4 years, the margin gets a little bit more narrow, gets a little bit closer, a little bit closer. It was only about 5 or 6% of a margin that Trump won that state in 2016. And it looks, by all accounts, this week that Biden has maybe a 4% lead in 2020. So what's going on? So lots of things are going on. One thing is demographics. The demographics of these states do change. So and I know a lot about it, Arizona, or I think I do. One change is migration. People moving from California into Arizona. There's more opportunities there. Taxes are lower, less air pollution. They want to go there, but they bring California values into this Republican state. The more democratic values, a more tendency to maybe lean towards democratic agendas, if not democratic candidates. Another thing, Latinos, migration or immigration from Mexico.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing also about Mexican immigrants, even second and third generation Mexican immigrants, is they have more kids than the non-Mexicans, the non-Mexican Americans. So demographically, Mexican Americans in Arizona have been a growing group. They're now up to about 32% of the population in Arizona, whereas only maybe 25 a few years ago. That makes a difference. And those Latinos are starting to vote more frequently in Arizona.
Yes, they're old
enough, but historically, Latinos just don't vote at the same rate as African Americans or white voters. They were just not punching up to their weight, basically. But now that's starting to change. They are voting more and more. Not always voting for Democrats, but they are a voting bloc that can be persuaded. And so they swing, which comes up this idea of swing voters.
Okay.
And then the last thing really is education. People are becoming more educated in Arizona, and they're moving to the suburbs. So we've heard a lot about the suburbs and how women are becoming much more of a Democratic constituency. And this is really true in Arizona. So you add all those things up, and maybe some more things like economics.
Yes.
You put all that together, and you can see that Arizona is competitive, and it does look, at least to me, like Biden is on his way to win that state, which will be one more step towards getting 270 electoral votes by the time this show airs.
So why, you said demographics, and you gave a couple of other factors, but that means that in the next presidential election, we could possibly see a whole new set of swing states, correct?
We could, and this gets back to the original problem. There are states that we call battleground states. They just happen to be in this election year, just happen for whatever reason, happen to be really close, but they're not close every single presidential election, not in a sequence. So I used until 2016, Pennsylvania is a great example of this.
Mm-hmm.
Every 4 years for the last 25 years, campaigns have fought it out in Pennsylvania. But until 4 years ago, Pennsylvania was never close. It almost always tilted to the Democrats, but the Republicans always thought they could win there, or they thought that they could get something out of it, maybe a Senate seat, or improve their House delegation, make it more Republican.
Okay.
But the presidency, they wouldn't win it. That's a battleground. It's not close enough, and it doesn't swing, but it's always a battleground. A swing state is much closer. It has a history of swinging. It has a history of swinging toward the eventual national vote winner. So it's called a bellwether, right?
Right.
It just, the old saying is, Ohio goes, so goes the nation.
Yeah, right.
It's the idea that this state is a microcosm somehow of the country. And if you can win in that state, it's a good sign that you're doing well in the rest of the country too. So swing states are that way. And they go into this kind of swinging motion for 3 or 4 presidential elections. And then sometimes they stop swinging. So a great example of this kind of thing going on would be Virginia.
Okay.
So anyone can remember the history of Virginia. It's been a deep Republican state, ever since, at least going back to World War II. I'd have to go back and look to see when it really was ever a blue state, but probably around the Civil War times. But a Republican state for a long period of time. And then around the time of 2008 with Barack Obama,
mm-hmm.
we noticed that in Virginia, it has a different population. It has more of an urban population,
Mm-hmm.
that has suburban, highly educated voters, and it has a lot of professional women. So Virginia starts to swing, and it swung for Obama in 2008. It went for Obama in 2012. It went for Clinton in 2016. It went for Biden in 2020. So here, Virginia is an example of a state that actually hasn't swung very much. It is a swing state, but it's no longer a swing state. It went from solid red to solid blue. Where going the other direction, Ohio has
Mm-hmm.
always been this swing state for a very long time, for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
But now we're looking at, in political science and in the media, we're looking at Ohio. It's no longer a swing state. I mean, it's gone for Republicans, multiple times in a row. Still competitive. It's a battleground.
It's a battleground state.
It's got to have the long drawn out count and the drama, but it doesn't really swing like it used to. And so we're saying, well, maybe it won't swing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The new swing states that are emerging: Arizona, Georgia, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin.
Yes.
And these are all in the news, right? These are the states that are becoming much more competitive, much more attuned to the ups and downs of the presidential national race, much more higher percentage of independent voters who
Mm-hmm.
really don't have a party loyalty and will just vote for the person and go back and forth.
Right.
So anyway, I'm starting to yammer on here, but you get the idea that this is important for political campaigns to try to figure out how to win in these states, because these are the places where presidential campaigns go to visit. This is the place where they spend the money on television ads. This is the one where you'll see volunteers knocking on doors and people getting phone calls 10 and 20 times and just wanting to tear their hair out because they're getting called by these campaigns all the times. That pollsters are constantly poking and prodding and trying to find out what's going on in these states. And it's sad.
Let me ask, before we get into that, because that's part of a quote that you that appeared today in Time magazine. I want to know, why was it in this particular election that Biden had more avenues through those states than Donald Trump did? Why was that possible? How did that happen?
Wow, that's a wild question. I haven't really thought too much about. I think the reason that this happened is that Biden started the election day, Tuesday, with a lead in more states than Trump had a lead in.
Okay.
Now, that's a whole other thing I'm afraid to even get into about why then wasn't this a landslide for Biden? Why were the polls apparently wrong?
Another day, because that's
another day. Yeah, we don't want to get in that.
Yeah.
But mathematically, that's the reason why. The other reason why is that you have to remember Donald Trump won like the most paper thin electoral college victory
margins
in those three key states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, literally by just a few thousand votes. It could have easily gone if just a few more people had voted for Hillary Clinton, or a few people had decided it was too rainy or too cold to go out and vote for Donald Trump. Yeah. Could have gone for Clinton. So in order to win, all Biden had to do was just do slightly better than Clinton. And so that added that many more routes to getting to 270 than Trump. Trump's states, Trump had just fewer states where he was doing well enough to win. Biden had more of them. And so he had more of these routes to get to 270.
Last but not least, your quote in Time magazine. You were quoted as saying that distrust in American institutions stemming back to Watergate. Why is that? And how did that happen? If you can give that to me in 3 minutes.
I could do it really fast. Well, we all remember Watergate and what a shock that was to a very wide swath of Americans who, but it didn't end with Watergate, because what we started seeing nationally was a decline of trust in the government to do the right thing for people. It's a standard polling question. Do you trust the government in Washington to do the right thing? Most of the time, some of the time, never. And the people who were saying never was increasing, and the number of people saying most of the time was decreasing. And so we saw this decline in trust in the general government. But one of the, and occasionally a president or a Congress, where we face a national crisis, that our faith would be restored, but only temporarily. So after 9/11, there was a tremendous amount of trust in American government. It lasted about a year and a half, 2 years before we saw the pattern reassert itself. For a little while under Clinton, it got better, but then the Monica Lewinsky scandals, and the divisions and the partisanship, people began to just not have the same faith. And partly this was partisan, right? You like the party, you trust the government more when your party's in power,
right?
And so on and so forth. Well, I think that swing states are part of that story. That not just the distrust in government, but we're starting to lose faith in the election, that the election is rigged or that the vote is somehow manipulated. This all stems from Watergate and the polarization we're facing, Michelle.
Well, if you think about what we've gone through in the last 5 to 6 years when it comes to presidential elections, and I say 5 to 6 years because people start campaigning now 2 years ahead of time. You think about all the false misinformation that was put out on social media. You think about the robocalls this time around to different communities saying, don't go out and vote because it's not going to be safe for you. And certainly in regard to Obama, I wonder if there's still a backlash because an African American was president for 8 years, and a lot of people still have an issue with that, to the point that the Democrats are still being labeled as socialist. So I think you have a lot of things when you start to talk about narrow margins and factors and what makes something a swing state. I think when you start to talk about how things shift, there are so many possible things that can really make it narrow.
Yeah. And our presidential elections, I mean, we're in a period of time when presidential elections are just going to be close. The country's divided along these partisan lines. Mm-hmm. The partisan divisions get played out in these states that are incredibly close, but there's only a few of them. It's not spread out across the country like it would have been between 1888 and 1988, where you'd see 40% of the states being battlefields like this. Mm-hmm. That's how it was dealt with. I hate to end the show on this sort of sour note, but there are things that can be done to sort of restore our faith in the elections. One is an interstate compact that is basically trying to say that each state would pledge to send their electors to vote for the party that won the national election.
Because
Connecticut is part of this
too, right? There's been controversy with that.
Yes, there has. And in fact, I'm not a big fan of this proposal, but Connecticut does it, and many other states. We're not quite there to see this change. I actually don't like this plan very much, Michelle. What I would rather see is much more uniformity in how we count the votes. You've noticed that we've got all these states that have different rules. I mean, you can go 9 days, 5 days, day of, then when these absentee ballots. If we don't straighten this out, what we're going to have is future problems in making voting easy and accessible for all Americans, regardless of race, class, region, or other conditions. We need to make voting safe, secure, but a lot easier. There's so many barriers to people actually casting a vote.
Who would put that plan together?
Well, you know, we've had many commissions over the years doing things to make voting more uniform, having rules, ballot access. States would need to put more money into election day vote counting and poll workers and make more polling sites available. But, you know, the politics right now is let's make voting let's just be honest. The Democrats would be very happy with making voting more accessible to everybody because that's to their advantage, and the Republicans will resist that because that's to their advantage. So whenever that starts to change, I think you'll see change. I've noticed something this election, Michelle, that might be a sign of change. That's early voting. The more we normalize early voting and this idea that let's not have election day, let's have election weekend. Let's have it the weekend before the election day and the weekend of election day. More states are doing this. We're starting to see the change in the acceptability of mail-in ballots, even though President Trump has fought it tooth and nail. More and more states, including Republican states, are adopting this idea of mailing in your ballot. It's secure, it's safe, and it's easier for people if they want to do it. I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next couple of elections with mail-in balloting, no excuse required, absentee balloting like Connecticut adopted this year, and so on and early voting.
Now, last but not least, second question. Do you see Trump being successful in taking his legal battle about the count to the Supreme Court?
Well, I don't, because, partly this doesn't make much sense. He's filed a suit in Michigan to stop the vote count, which is idiotic because he's behind in the vote count. So he's basically got a lawsuit to give that state over to Joe Biden. In Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court has already ruled on Pennsylvania having the ability to count late arriving absentee ballots until this Friday. By the time any of these things come through, the vote will be done, and it would be very, very hard for justices and courts to undo a vote count that is based on the rules that have prevailed in a state. So what I'm trying to say is it's very, very unlikely that Donald Trump's lawsuits will be able to change the situation so that he ends up winning. I think the final thing, though, is, I've been doing the math on this for, many, many hours, spending my days on this. But if you look at where we are tonight, which is Wednesday, November 4th, we've just heard back from Michigan. That's going to go for Biden. We've heard back from Wisconsin. That will go for Biden. All we really need to hear now for Biden to get 270 electoral votes, which is all he needs, is to hear back from Arizona, which is already tilted towards Biden, as we've been talking about, and Nevada. It won't even get to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, if Trump did something in Pennsylvania and stopped the vote count,
and that won't be.
I just don't see it would matter. It would still be a Biden win.
Yeah. All right.
So you can. So if you're a Trump fan, I think that's tough news to hear. If you're a Biden supporter, I think you can feel kind of confident going into this week of counting absentee ballots in these states.
All right. Thank you so much for all of that clarification and a little bit of history, because I think what's missing is an American's understanding of their vote and how it works. It's one thing to vote. It's another thing to understand what that represents, what that means. So I thank you for making that clear for people. And we're going to have
we want people to vote.
We want people
That's
to vote.
What we need.
Yeah, we want them to exercise their civic duty. One person will vote. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think if people around the country felt that their vote was as important as people in swing states think that their vote is important, we would have a lot more people voting in these elections.
So
that would be good.
How do you do that? Does that start with civics in school for young people? How do you do that? How do you make people realize that their vote is really important and there's power in their vote?
Well, I do. I'm a huge supporter of civics education, and I think we don't do a good enough job of this in the country. But I really think it's, to use a phrase, it's structural. It's that, we have this electoral system that puts a lot of barriers in people's way to vote. It makes it difficult for people to vote, especially those who face challenges because of their socioeconomic status, or their education level, or their age, or their status as an ex-convict or ex-felon. We put all kinds of roadblocks. I think one of the things we need to do is tell people that their vote does matter, is to try to deal with those obstacles and lower them to a more reasonable level. The other thing, though, is I think that just having a different way of thinking about what elections mean. Allowing people to vote on early and things like that.
It helps. It helps. Scott Mclean is a professor of political science at Quinnipiac University in Hamden, Connecticut. I'm sure John Morgan would be pleased for me to say that. He is also the co-author of Presidential Swing States, along with David Schultz of Hamline University. And that book is published by Lexington Books. Professor Mclean, so glad to have you here on The Collective, and going to have you back, and we're going to talk about that book.
I really want to join your collective, Michelle. Well, it's great. It's a great experience.
Part of it. I hope you will. I hope you will. Scott, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And folks, that wraps it up for this week's edition of The Collective. Join me next week when we will have a very special guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You got to look for the ads. Okay. Scott, I'll tell you offline who it's going to be.
Count me in. I'll be on watching.
I hope so. And this has been The Collective on WSME Enlightenment Radio. Enjoy.